We'll be beginning a class here in just a minute in Genesis 37. As always, if you have questions or comments as we go through, feel free to stop me and we'll see if we can answer your question. Last week we talked about after the death of Isaac that Esau had planned to kill Jacob. Anybody remember why he wanted to kill Jacob? Because he had stolen his birthright. Remember, Esau was the oldest and he was supposed to get it, but it was given that he stole it from his brother. Remember who his mother was? Rebecca, very good. Okay, Rebecca was their mother, and when she found out about this attempt to kill him, she encouraged him to go to her brother's house and to seek refuge from Esau and to give him a little bit of time to cool down. And so he went and he went to his uncle's house. And he began to work for him, and then after about a month, his uncle's name was Laban. Laban came to him and told him, he said, well, it's not right, even though you're my kin, to work for nothing. He said, what do you want? And Laban had 2 daughters. One of them was said to be very beautiful, and so he told him that he would work for 7 years for his daughter. Well, he worked those 7 years. At the end of those 7 years, they prepared a wedding feast, and at the time of the marriage, Laban went and got his oldest daughter and secretly gave him to Jacob. Jacob found out the next morning that he'd been tricked. And he went back to Laban and to question him about it. And Laban told him it was a custom in their country to the oldest daughter had to marry first. And so he agreed that he would work for 7 more years for Rachel, which he did. Well, as each daughter got married, their father both gave them a servant girl, and through the years, Jacob had children by all of these women. Wound out it was 12 sons in all, and they became the 12 patriarchs that we read about in the Old Testament. Of course, Joseph, he was the first child of Rachel, and Jacob loved him more than all of his other sons because he was the son of his old age, and also because Rachel was the woman that he really loved. And Jacob had given his son Joseph this coat of many colors, which made his brothers very, very jealous of him. This coat was said to be, it had long sleeves and it went all the way to the ankles. It was typically a coat that would be worn by someone in royalty. Well, it turned out that Joseph, he was just a young man, and he began to have these dreams, and when he would go to his brothers and family to tell them these dreams, they hated him even the more. These dreams pointed to the fact that one day that these brothers, they would bow down to him, and that he would reign over them. Any questions so far? Okay. We'll begin in a minute with a word of prayer. Does anybody have any requests? Anybody we need to pray for? Okay. Let's begin with a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for this day and for this time we have to come to study from our most holy word. We are thankful for the word that we can read and we can study and we can know that will from man. We're thankful for the examples that we read about in the Old Testament about those who remain faithful to thee no matter what the cost, and that they can be an example to us, that we can certainly live our lives in accordance to thy will. We're mindful of those of our number who have been mentioned, who were sick and shut in, those who lost loved ones. We pray their blessing upon them. We pray that you be with us through this study, and the things we learn will apply to our life. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Okay, if somebody would, it's kind of a long reading, but you can turn over to Genesis 37. If you would read, starting in verse 12, and I'm sorry, I was next. No wonder I didn't look right. Genesis 37, if you'll read 12 through 36 for me. Yeah, if you get out of breath, I'll finish.
All right. Genesis 37, 12 through...
Up to the end here.
Through the end. And his brothers went to feed their father's flock at Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, here I am. And he said to him, go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, they are departed hence, for I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, behold, the dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will come of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into the pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into the pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat. They sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brethren, what profit it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And the brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not, and I whither shall I go? And they took Joseph out and killed, they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. And they set the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, this have we found. Know how whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it and said, it is my son's coat, an evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes and put a sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to comfort him. And he said, For I will go down into the grave until my son mourn. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, in a short time, the hatred of Joseph's brothers grew into a crime. That's where we talked a little bit how anger can grow and the thoughts of murder can certainly enter into someone's mind. They may not actually commit the crime because of lack of opportunity or because they lack the courage to actually carry it out. But remember, Jesus taught that anyone that was angry with his brother would be in danger of the judgment. So just it wasn't committing that act, but just to have that anger in one's heart is the same thing. So Jacob, he sends Joseph out to check on his brothers who were feeding their flock. And the Bible said they were about 2 days' journeys away, which it would be about 12 miles from where their home was, to check on them to see how they were doing and see how their flock was doing. Well, when he got there, he couldn't find them. He was wandering around in the field, and a man came to him and asked him what he was looking for, and he told him that he was looking for his brothers who were feeding their sheep. And the man told him that he had heard that they had gone to another town, which was about 15 miles away. They'd gone, he was about 15 miles away. And when his brothers, they saw him coming, the Bible said he was a great distance away, but they made a plan that they would kill him. And they said, here comes that dreamer, let's kill him and let's see what happens to his dreams then. And they were thinking about, they came up with a plan that they would throw him in a pit and then kill him or whatever, and then they would let the father know that he'd been killed by a wild beast. Even though they were probably 25 or 30 miles from home, they thought they were probably far enough away that no one would know of what they had done. Sometimes people try to fool themselves by getting far away from home and then doing things, especially from people that they get away from people that they know to do things that they would not do at home for fear of certainly getting caught. We've heard stories who live totally separate lives, that sometimes they will raise families in 2 different cities. The man may turn out, he may be a truck driver or something, and he has reason to be away, like that, so nothing is suspected. And a lot of times they live like this for many years, and then they steal before they're found out. I saw a story not too long ago about this man that was a religious man, that he was well thought of in his community, and he had 3 children. 2 of them were teenagers and one was a little bit younger. But he didn't like the way they were kind of getting attached to the world. He didn't like the way they dressed. He didn't like the music that they were listening to, and he thought the best thing to do was that he would kill them, and they would certainly be better off dead than the way they were living. So he came up with a plan that he wound up. He killed his wife, he killed his mother, and as his children came home from school, he killed them. Well, he left, and he was probably gone for over a week before these bodies were ever found. So he went to another state, and the man had been an accountant all of his life, and he got a job at a firm as an accountant. He met a woman there, and they were married, and he became involved in his church again, and he was a upstanding man in the community. And then the police, they started opening up some of these cold case files, and an artist took a picture of him like that was taken 20 years earlier, and they drew a picture of him what they thought he may look like. Well, that picture got out, and it was amazing how close that picture was to what this man actually looked like, and that's why he was caught. So it took him 20 years to catch him, but that's what happened. He thought he was certainly free from what he had done. Of course, God has never been pleased with those who try to mislead others. If somebody would read Proverbs 11:1 for me.
A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight.
Okay. So God was never pleased with people who try to cheat their others buying and selling. Some of these merchants, they would use heavy weights when they were buying stuff wholesale, and then when they were selling it, they would use lighter weights. So they were cheating the people they were buying it from, and also the people they were selling it to. Turn over to Matthew 7. I'm sorry, Mark 7. Somebody would read 20 through 23.
And he said, that which cometh out of man, that defileth the man. For from within all the heart of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile the man.
Okay. Of course, Jesus is teaching that all these evil thoughts, they come from a man's heart. Now let's get back to Joseph, who's in this pit. You can imagine as they took his coat away from him, how they taunted him and made fun of him while they had stripped him of his coat and thrown him in the pit. Now Reuben, he was the oldest child. Remember, his mother was Leah, and he was against his plan all along. I guess as the oldest son, he may have felt that he had some responsibility for his younger brother, and he advised him to throw him into this pit in the desert. And I've seen big brothers who it was okay for them to beat on their little brother, but wouldn't let anybody else beat on him, So he was trying to protect him, and this hole that he was thrown in was probably a cistern that held water during the rainy season. But the Bible tells us that this time this pit was dry. The other brothers, they seemed to be satisfied with what they were fixing to do. They were satisfied that he would die there. But Reuben's intent was to go back and to get Joseph out of the pit and to give him back to his father. From some of the early historians, we read about one, particularly Josephus. He writes about how a lot of different cisterns were used a lot of time to put to hold prisoners in. Anybody else remember anybody else that was thrown down into a cistern? You see people thinking back there. Yeah. Okay, remember the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah. Of course, he was in Jerusalem at this time, and he was in prison. And the Babylonian army, they were coming to Jerusalem to take it. he was in this terrible prison. It was a dungeon. And the king of Jerusalem came, called for him and asked him if he had any word from God. And he told him that yes, he had, and that the king would be turned over to the king of Babylon. But he asked the king, he said, will you please get me out of this dungeon, because I have to go back there. He said, I will surely die there. So the king told him, put him in the courtyard where he was it's kind of a minimum security type deal. So he could still be there and they would take care of him. The king actually liked him, but it was a lot of others who did not like him. But at least he was there and they could take care of him and he would be fed. Of course, the city was under siege. They were running out of food. They were running out of water. And Jeremiah, he continued to prophesy about the things that would come. And he was telling them that anyone who stayed there, they would be killed in war or they would die from starvation. But anyone who surrendered to the army, that they would live. Well, some of these officials, they didn't like what he was saying. Some of the army in Jerusalem there, some of them were defected, going to the other side. Of course, their morale was real low because they were talking about surrender. But Jeremiah was telling them that was the only way that you will live if you will surrender. Well, some of the officials, they didn't like what he was saying, so they took him and they threw him into a cistern. In this cistern, the Bible says that Jeremiah sank up to his knees into the mud, which kind of shows that they were running out of water and they were just going to leave him there. Well, there was one of the eunuchs there in the court there, and he went to the king and told him that was a terrible thing that had been done to him, and to please let him go get him out. And so the king gave him 30 men and told him to go and rescue him. Well, they went and found some rope, and they found the Bible says they found some old clothes and some old rags, which they threw down to him that he could wrap around his body so they could put the ropes around him and pull him out. And so that he was rescued that way. What does that teach us right there about the old rags and the old clothes?
Good for something.
That's right. And never throw anything away. I've been trying to teach you that for years.
I've been doing that a long time. She throws it away.
Well, I got something out of the garbage the other day. I can't remember what it was. That she thrown away. I have to look behind it real close.
But in thinking about the ones thrown in the system, made me think about Paul. He was thrown into prison and down in the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jonah, he was thrown in the work no system.
Yeah. I thought about him, for sure. But anyway, we'll get back to Joseph. Of course, Reuben had saved Joseph's life by suggesting that they, throw him in this pit. But as they were sitting down and they were eating, they saw this caravan that was coming through, and they was traveling to Egypt, and Judah saw it and said, saw an opportunity to sell him. And his question was, how much is a dead brother worth? And he said, we may not be able to hide or to conceal his blood. Remember when Cain killed Abel, God asked him, he said, where is our brother? And he replied that he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? And God asked him, he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood cried unto me from the ground. Somebody would turn over to Exodus 2 and read 11 through 14 for me, please. Exodus 2, 11 through 14.
One day Moses
says, grown up, and went out to his people and looked on the burden. And saw struck down the Egyptians and hid them in the sand. How far did you say?
Through 14 places.
When he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to them in the wrong, and why do you strike together?
Did you read 14?
He answered, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and thought, surely they is known.
Okay, thank you. Of course, Moses had grown up as Pharaoh's daughter, and he, of course, he'd had the best of everything for a long time. Moses was around 40 years old at this time, and when he saw his brethren being mistreated by the Egyptian, verse 12 said that he looked this way and looked that way, so it kind of shows his intent that he was fixing to do this man some harm. And when he saw nobody was looking, well, he slew that Egyptian. And then when he realized that this thing was known, well, he fled the country to get out. Many times people think that they may have committed a perfect crime, that nobody saw them do anything. But in today's time, a lot of times after someone is found that's been murdered, they'll go in there and they'll check. They may find a drop of blood, they may find a hair, and they'll get DNA, and they'll find, and they can link people to that crime, but they thought that it was never. It's amazing how they can find the many things that they do and convict people like that. Of course, Judah said, he said, let's sell him and we'll get rid of him, and we won't have to, his drink won't come true. So the Bible says that they pulled him up out of the pit, sold him for 20 pieces of silver, and off to Egypt he went. Somebody would read Leviticus 27:5.
Put it under the compass of the altar beneath, that the net may be even to the midst of the altar.
Leviticus
Oh,
27:5.
Wrong book.
If the person is from 5 years old up to 20 years old, the valuation shall be for a male 20 shekels, and for a female 10 shekels.
Okay, here the price was set for the price of a boy between the age of 5 and 20. In Exodus 21:32, we see that the average price of a slave was 30 pieces of silver. Of course, this caravan, they bought Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, and they knew that they could make a profit. They could get 30 for him when he got into Egypt, so they were going to make a profit on him. Evidently, this business was changed between this caravan and these brothers. Reuben must not have been there when that happened, because when he came back to the pit and he found that Joseph was gone, he became very, very upset, and he showed it by tearing his clothes. That showed his intense grief that he was going through because of his brother's disappearance. The brothers decided that they would dip Joseph's coat. They would kill a goat, and then they would send it, take it to their father, and to see if this is their son's coat or not. It's kind of interesting to me that when they took that to him, they didn't say, "Is this the coat of our brother?" They asked, "Is this your son's coat?" Instead of saying anything about their brother. course, Jacob recognized the coat at once, and he knew that it was his son's, and he knew then that he'd been killed by some kind of wild beast, and that the Bible says that all of his sons and grandchildren, they all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, and he said that he would mourn for him until the day that he died. How deceitful can somebody be that their sons would try to comfort him, knowing what they have done by their lying and their hypocrisy. Of course, Reuben, he failed at his attempt to rescue Joseph, but he didn't have the courage to tell what his brothers had done. In verse 36, it says that in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, who was an important man. He was captain of the guard. Did anybody know what the captain of the guard, what his job was? I didn't know either. I had to look it up. But he was the captain of all the executioners. They carried out all the capital sentences that was ordered by the king. Many times you'll read about when a city is taken over by another king, and they will capture the king, and they will take his family, they will take everybody that's associated with them, and they will take them back to their country, and there a lot of times they would take the king, and they would bind him, and then they would bring out his children one by one, and they would torture them and kill them in front of his very eyes. One of the reasons they would do that was they didn't want any remnant of his lineage out there that may come back and try to come back and to take over the new kingdom or whatever that had been set up. They would kill those children, and then when they got through, they would pluck that man's eyes out. They didn't poke his eyes out. They actually said they removed him from the sockets, which was very violent, the things that they did to these people. Well, as we go back to the 20 pieces of silver, which Joseph was sold for, who else do we know that was sold for some silver?
Jesus.
Of course, Jesus was sold for 30 pieces. Huh? That's right. He was sold. Remember, that was the price of a slave. Was 30 pieces of silver. Anybody have any idea how much that was worth at that time? It was worth about $15, which they said that was about a month's pay. Was what that was worth at that time. Well, when we get to that story, we see that Jesus, he was in Bethany. This is just a couple of days for the Passover, and he's at Simon's house. Remember, Simon was a leper that Jesus had cured, and Lazarus, he was there. Remember, Jesus had raised him from the dead, and his sister Mary and Martha, they were both there too. Well, Mary, she came there, and she had this vessel of precious ointment, and of course the other disciples, they were there with them. And she took this ointment and she poured it upon Jesus' head and feet. There's some estimates out there that the cost of this perfume that she used was probably $300 to $400, which was very well, been a year's pay for someone back then. Where some of the disciples, they were kind of outraged at the waste of this perfume. They thought it could go on to a much better purpose. And the Bible tells us that Judas, he was the main complainer. Why was Judas wanting to raise such a stink about it?
He was money hungry.
Okay, he was their treasurer. He kept the purse, and he wanted have the money so he could steal it. The Bible said that he was a thief. So anyway, of course, Jesus came to Mary's defense, which imagine how she felt when they were all picking at her. And Jesus, he came to her defense, and he rebuked them, telling them that they would always have the poor, but he would not be with them. He would not always be with them. In fact, he was probably only there with them for another 2 or 3 days before he would be crucified. Of course, Judas was angry because he'd been rebuked by Jesus, and I guess his hate and his anger grew, and he decided to take action. The Bible says that Satan entered into him, and Judas went to the chief priests and to the captains to make a proposition to them. They didn't tempt him first, but the evil originated in Judas's own heart. And he asked him, he said, what are you willing to give me, and I will deliver him to you. So we'll see here that Jesus was sold for the price of a slave, which was 30 pieces of silver, and we know how that all kind of turned out right there. Anybody have any other questions or thoughts or anything?
You wonder where I've heard the comment people do so they say the devil made me do it.
Yeah,
Wonder if that's where they got that slave.
could be, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, we will pick up. Joseph will be at Potiphar's house next week, and we'll talk about him. So, thank y'all.
Thank you. And I saw a whole damn list, fixed him on the computer, that way I could get busy in the hall.
Yeah, well, you know what, he looks so different, I didn't recognize he had that. I mean, I ran back, because I showed my face, and I said, oh, it's Jill, and she said, that's Jill. I said, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom.
They're okay. It's a long time. Nice job. He knocked that pretty well.
Hey, hey.
I like it, I was still on Thursday.
He checked his kids and he.
That's what we had.
And he's still
Y'all welcome to